any questions as to where we are? Anything OOC you'd like me to pare down from our last few episodes? I guess I'm stalling for time to give the other players time to arrive.
Two things. Number one, I think I need a recap of where we were. I don't know if maybe my brain is just fried or something, or maybe I might have lost track of where we were, because I was also running after a long hiatus, finally getting back into my session. So I might have gotten some details mixed up by accident.
Okay.
But also I was wondering if you got a chance to look at what I had posted regarding the convictions in my...
I did. I was still working up a paraphrasing of them to boil them down. I did like that you retooled the ethically heroic aspects. That was a very, very good thing in my opinion. And there's some people who like the clearly cut, inherently biased toward the ethical good. I think that we should remain somewhere firmly in the gray area for the most part.
Okay.
I too could use... Oh, go ahead. I was going to say, Damn it. I was going to say that I too could use a recap, because I have been very busy doing something else gaming wise, and I don't even know what the hell's going on there at this point. So,
okay, fair enough. I definitely can help with that. When we last left our coterie, they had returned to the apartment. Hesha got a bad feeling, and you all decided to go back and check on her. As you all made your way into the building, made your way upstairs, you realized that there was a very good chance that he was far closer than you all had initially believed, because while it took you guys roughly 20, 25, maybe 30 minutes at the outside to get going, and then decide to turn around, come back, 30 minutes is a long time, or too short of a time to, set any grandiose sort of trap. It's just long enough for someone who had been far closer to have done what he did. He bled her out with the most beautiful view of the city as her last images. As you all put one and one together to get 11, Lucio, I did not mention it to anyone, but had hit upon the idea that Nash had been feeding on his descendants. He had spent the last several generations searching out members of his family for his specific feeding preference. Young, attractive members of his extended family. Realizing that he had, in fact, ended the only connection he had, you all had to him about this, and you all having had experience and explored his apartment, his home away from home, his actual haven, he set fire to the building, set a fire trap so that the building itself would go up like kindling. In the doing, he had also managed to knock on doors and ring bells and get all of the elderly people who lived in the building nearly out by the time the fire department arrived. As you all stood watching the building go up and the older folks milling around the first floor and exiting the building and being escorted off premises by the fire department, there was the understanding that for most of the actions that the coterie individually and together had experienced, he was loosely affiliated with them all. He was the catalyst for the blackmailer. He was the connection with the coterie to Sylvia even. He was indirectly involved with the coterie from the very beginning, including the board-up company that was responsible for maintaining the derelict property in which Lucio lost his life. He's always been 1.5 degrees of Kevin Bacon away from the coterie. And now as the building goes up, that dawning falls across most of the coterie's understanding. From the painted lady's descent into what appeared to be madness, to the coterie's interactions with the Castiglione and Tories, to the Christian Science room where Lucio defeated the insane and strung out Blakeney. All of those moments tumbling through the character's mind. That's where we left everyone, with them watching the burnt building burn, and one tied to the many mysteries floating in and around them draw to a close.
Thank you. That's much appreciated.
My pleasure. So outside of an actual confession, the coterie can be of roughly 90% positive that Nash will not return, which achieves the goal of the mission they were given, if not the exact details.
Even so, I think... Right now, are we like in character or out of character right now?
No, we're out of character.
Okay, because I was gonna say I think we still need to get that confession just so we don't fail the letter of the mission, because that's what a lot of them are probably going to care about. The higher ups.
I mean, provided we can find him.
Can't be too far. He did just set fire to the building.
So you guys have a goal in mind. That's always a good thing. Hitch your wagons to a star. That way, if you fail, you'll at least land on the moon. Or something like that. I don't know. I don't do any real reading anymore. All right. So I just got a missive from Hesha. She is, in fact, on her way. Let me check my drink volume's a little low. Give me one quick second. All right. Drinkage obtained. And
yay!
by the way, tonight's episode is brought to you by the makers of Vita Coco, coconut water, pineapple flavored for those with taste. And it means the exact same thing as an upside down pineapple if you turn the bottle wrong side up. All right. One quick perusal, and then if there are any other questions, suggestions, hypotheses, corners we need to round up, we will dive right in. Mids on scene roughly as the coterie watch the building go up.
So we actually do see the fire itself, right?
Yes.
Is that going to be an issue for us?
Only if you get close enough to the building. From a distance, watching it happen, there's that tribulation of fear, but knowing that it's far enough away. For instance, looking at a tiger through binoculars or on your computer or laptop versus looking at a tiger in the same cage. It has a complete difference. There's still that small hair-raising idea when you hear it roar, when you hear it looking your direction or watch it kind of scent the wind. But knowing that it's far enough away and you are safe where you are, tiptoeing across the mall, though it might be. But if you get close, on something else entirely.
If I remember correctly, it has started on the top floors anyway.
Yes.
Yeah.
Almost as if someone wanted it to burn down past their haven so that there wouldn't be any proof.
Can't imagine who would want that sort of thing to happen.
Right?
The act of being a good Samaritan, blocking the fighting the fire to rage a little bit faster, a little interesting.
What a civic-minded bastard.
Means he can't have gone far, because if he's the one that alerted everyone, and of course he's the one who killed her, he still has to be relatively close by.
That would make sense.
Assuming, of course, that he didn't have a retainer or something to it.
He was definitely the one.
Good, upstanding owner of a company that stretches back generations in the Chicagoland area, a once potential rival to the very prince of the city. How would they ever have a retainer? You saw his haven. It was a hovel, the 4-room little condominium.
This is why Sophia is here to think of those things.
And we know how successful doing two things at once always turns out.
Oh, wait a minute. When we saw her, you said that there was still a lot of blood. Like, she wasn't drained of blood. It looked like she had been...
Like her throat was cut.
Like her throat was cut, right?
Yes.
And not well either. Like they had to hit it twice, if I remember correctly.
Absolutely correct. Good memory.
Fuck.
So also further evidence it was probably not done by Nash or a pirate for that matter, because they'd have probably got it on the first swing.
Well, it's just like your golf game. Some things are just muscle memory.
Is Lucio allowed to get an insight roll to see if he can piece together definitively whether this was
an investigator,
or what's their like some sort of either insight or investigation? See if he knows for sure whether it was a retainer or not. Or at least piece some sort of useful information together.
Sure. Let's go with that. Crime scene deduction. Are you basing it solely off the many varied vicissitudes of your gut instinct, or are you going to attempt to piece the crime together from what information you were presented?
I want to piece it together from the info I have presented.
All right. That being the case, this is to roll intelligence plus academics, or if you have either investigation or even etiquette might help. Just to measure time and how much effort it would have taken.
I'm definitely better with investigation. So
if you would like to spitball this off each other, I can assist you because I have a really high intelligence and several dots in academics.
I would most definitely like to spitball the ideas.
All right, sounds like a plan. And I got a lovely notification just now. Is that one of our many coterie members arriving? Let me open up Discord so I can actually look at the screen and see.
Yeah, Hestia's here.
All right. Hi. Hello. Welcome. All right. So that being the case, you two go ahead and begin. Well, let's start at the beginning, shall we? There's no sense in not at this point. We have stalled. We have conducted ourselves as expert gamers and armchair detectives. with all due import, as always, I want to thank you guys for sharing this. If it doesn't show, and it hasn't shown, I am a fan of not only the game we play, but the game that is Vampire V5, the tabletop experience, our little world unto ourselves here in this version of Chicago, and all of your efforts that have made that possible. Without further ado, this is officially Soup City Sins, Season 12, Episode 6, Gentled by Night's Rage. When we last left our coterie, they watched in the existential horror that only comes from being an undead thing, watching the carnage left in the wake of a fellow member of the undead community, left in the wake of Nash, the destruction of property, the destruction of homes. And unlike even the realization as to what horror fire causes and wreaks, that are the purview of the firefighters and the humans gathering around the lobby area being pulled free, the firefighters rushing headlong into the flames, knowing the damage of the fire, knowing the damage of that beast. The horror that the kindred have is considerably more so, because on a level that is barely fathomable by the humans, there before them is the sign of destruction. There before them is the eternal damnation of what little bit of their soul remains. And even from this safe distance, outside of the back spray of the water hoses, outside of the hubbub of rushed activity, even here, far enough away where the roar of the flame is nothing more than a gentle whisper, there is that fear, because there is final, true, everlasting death. And as they watch, Lucio and Sophia begin discussing the idea as to Nash being present, being far closer, at least initially, or being able to see what was happening, at least initially. The chances of capturing him and forcing the letter of the law, the letter of the agreement upon him, a confession. It's always that way with the kindred community, especially the kindred community of the tower. The letter of the law matters, and it's the reason why the orders are given in such a gray outlook. Confession towards what? There are many things that the coterie has realized he has had his hand in throughout the entirety of their existence as the shelter. Many moments that have been 1-2 steps removed from his direct actions over the course of these many months, over the course of this last year. The result of his actions, the dominoes fell by his nudging, his push, his clearly chaotically minded intentions to do something else entirely.
Sorry, do we make the roll now, or?
Yes.
Okay. Intelligence and investigation?
Yes.
Sophia's help
That's
add
Sophia's
anything, or are we
help.
just rolling separately?
Separately. We're going to add them together.
Okay. Yes.
Well, now, isn't that funny? So, despite all of his roguish affectations, the very real person that lived there, the very real soul of the being that existed in such a ordered, daily cleaned, fastidious, hearkening back to times past, is not the sort of person that would not have retainers. Is not the sort of person that would not have those they can call on for pay, whether that pay was actual funds or extortion or what have you. There is most assuredly a network of individuals who owe some allegiance and fealty to the man. After all, he was in fact a blue blood of note at more than one occasion throughout the city's history. He even potentially rivaled Prince Jackson. Before he was prince, of course, but those wounds seldom heal, and when they do, the scars are never forgotten. There's no way that a cruel, vicious monster that he was, with such a fastidious mind, that it was he who slit his paramour's throat. It most assuredly was not he that began the fire. And if he began the fire, he wouldn't have been the one to knock on doors and call. It also means, however, with the addiction and fear of the flames, that right at this moment, someone is either videotaping this or he's close enough to see this. It is the ending of a life. It is the ending of a mask within mask. It is a destruction of things that clearly have more value than any life of any being he's ever run across. And the other thing that may not have made immediate or sparked any immediate thought, there's no proof you all were here. There's no proof that you all were involved. Which means that while Nash is driven on, or at least should be driven on after this, while successful, someone can, how did a kid say? Throw salt.
Hector definitely realized this. He was looking around the kind of set faces, kind of realizing very much so that this ain't over, this isn't done. He kind of got away, and that's not okay with what they were supposed to do.
The Nash isn't here, that's for sure. It's had to have been one of his retainers. We have to find him, and fast. We might have been successful in driving him out, but unless we get the confession, which is the exact mission that we were given, we are fucked.
And how do you propose we are do this?
Under normal circumstances, I'd ask Melinda to help because she's so good at finding things. And my supernatural insight is nowhere near as good as my regular mundane investigative skills. Otherwise, I'd have to call a few people to see if maybe I can find out quickly.
phone.
I'm sorry, what was that?
Didn't you just tell us I still have the phone? You were still supposed to meet him in exchange for this. And he has no honor of if he doesn't keep his word.
You mean on that? She did not keep his word.
Okay, that's not honor our side of the deal, but obviously that was just to get us out so he could kill her to destroy everything.
I mean, if we want a chance it, we could go to where we agreed and see if he actually does honor his word. But do we want to chance it?
Well, just because he had her killed doesn't mean he's not going to show up.
Perhaps, yes, he is covered tracks.
It's worth a shot, but just in case, I'm going to make a call to see if I can get some assurances. So at least we have someone on this while we possibly go into another trap. And at this point, Lucio is going to... Actually, does he have Waneka's number?
He did gain a way to reach out to Wanika. The trick, as is always the case as of late, with his increase in ability, with his connection with the other, with Oblivion, whether his phone will respond.
He will still attempt to call. His second bet would be Martin if Waneka can't be reached.
All right, sounds like a plan. Would you be so kind of just go ahead and roll your wits plus Oblivion?
Wits and Oblivion?
Wits and Oblivion.
Oh no, is this one that I want to roll low on? Oh god,
Well,
wait, I have...
You'll be setting the difficulty for your intelligence and technology roll for your phone, just so that you're aware.
Oh god. I have 10 dice.
Yay, this will be fun. How understanding is the entirety of the Shadowlands to your need to use modern technological means of contact? Let's see that lovely beam footage, shall we?
Oh,
Oh,
you got a me roll.
Well, it seems as if fate is conspiring to help you as best as possible. Now give that lovely wit to technology roll. You have your DC. You, sir, have been gifted by fate with the gift of communication. As you dial the number that you are not sure will work, the hissing and scratching and beeping and popping of your line is at an all-time low. No, that doesn't help with the garbled, balaclava-clad response of Wanika. Yeah, what do you want?
Would you be able to do a favor for me?
Bones are nice. What are you offering?
A favor in return, whenever you need it.
Whenever I need it. Okay. What do you got?
I need you to find Walter Nash.
Your life isn't worth that much. Click.
I'm sorry, what did he just say?
Your life is not worth that much.
Sounds like a no.
Well then. He's gonna start dialing Martin's number.
Well, you have your DC for the night. You should be good. Make it happen. Just don't screw up.
I will have someone fetch the car while he's making this series of telemarketing calls.
Hello, have you had the opportunity to switch to Walter Nash person finders as of yet? No, you haven't? Well, let me tell you what you receive if you do so. And as Lucia reaches out to Martin, dialing the bar where everyone who is anyone knows that is the only way to reach him. Good old-fashioned landline, phones handed from one hand to the next. Silvio disappears off to retrieve the vehicle, which you also have not returned to its parking slot, but, well, it seems no one has noticed or called in a missing car or stolen car or anything else for the police as far as it's concerned. There's a very sinking suspicion that Silvio took steps to make sure that that was not a possibility. As he returns with the vehicle, Lucio finally reaches through to the bar. And as usual, the same brusque bar maiden who sounds as if she is literally chewing on a mouthful of sharpened stones passes the phone along to Martin, who, because of the relationship that they've shared, is as forthcoming as he can be without giving away any valuable information. Nash has called in all of his favors. No one who is anyone who has received a boon or protection from him for destroying the evidence of a sloppy feeding will help in finding him. It's the reason why you all were given a job that was designed for failure. Him calling in all of his boons means that there is no elder who has not solely used the circulatory system or Blakeney's counter organization who doesn't owe a small favor to him for destroying bodies and making sure it looks as if there was a fire. No elder who doesn't or hasn't used his board up services. There's no upwardly mobile kindred who has not loosely been associated with him. It's the reason why, even as outcast as he was amongst a certain class of kindred, he was still tolerated. It is that network of debt owed him the reason why he had not been run out of town on a rail. And it is that network of favors accumulated over decades the reason why he has and had the freedom he did. And the car eases to the curb, Silvio stepping out, moving around to open the door for Sophia.
Did you have any luck?
Apparently not. We might be on our own.
He might be in the wind too. He might be planning to start a new life elsewhere if he has cashed in all his chips, as it were.
That definitely seems to be the case. But we're fucked if we don't find him and get him to confess.
A case could possibly be made that his fleeing the city is his confession. But you are probably right.
Well, the question is, do we want to go ahead and go to the meeting spot then?
Do we have any better leads?
There's that field, but there's no guarantee he would be going to ground there. Where else would
You
he go to
perhaps
ground?
have Patsy to send.
You mean Arsenio?
If you feel he is expendable.
No. I do not feel he is expendable.
Well, that is what I asked. You have someone, a Patsy, you can send who might be expendable.
Lucio looks at Silvio.
She shrugs and says, "This is not my fight. I'm not willing to necessarily risk my man for this."
Fuck, I even told him I'd give him a night off.
He's not suggesting you send someone to death. It's just suggesting if you have someone who could be sent to death, perhaps we send them to their death.
I don't think I'd send to his death. I trust him. He's reliable.
Don't we want Vivi dead anyway?
Can send Vivi, maybe? You guys know how to get a hold of Vivi?
Try it, but other than that, Lucio, did you notice anything strange about Nash and the girl?
You mean beyond the fact that he's been feeding on his own descendants?
Oh yes, besides that. Yeah. But this seems a little cold for somebody who cared as much as he did about her. To just have her throat slit and out. Yeah, I'm just curious, because you're the detective. So, what did you notice about Nash and the girl? Their interactions or whatever.
Sorry, repeat that. It was a little hard to hear.
Their interactions or whatever. Like, what did you notice about how they behaved?
Lucio looks in deep thought right now. He is trying. It's clear that he's trying to pick his brain right now, trying to find the answer.
I feel like perhaps you consider girl to be way more important than girl actually was. Girl was food. He has dropped his food on the floor. He find more food. He does not care about that. It was inconvenient, an annoyance at best.
If he feeds off of his family, could we trace his tree and cut off his food source, so to speak?
Maybe.
That's
But
a
there's also
possibility.
the fact that it wasn't just the girl at that location. You see all that memorabilia, all those memories, all those trophies of things he's done.
Wait a minute. Wait a minute. The grave. Wasn't there a picture of a grave? So if all of
Yes.
if he's feeding on his descendants and they're all in the Chicago area, do we think maybe that grave site might be of his old mortal lover?
It could be.
If that's an important place for him, then maybe he'd go there before he leaves.
Is perhaps true.
Bye. If he's running, he'll say goodbye.
Is not optimal, but the clock is ticking. Yes, we need to make decision and go. Otherwise, wherever he is, we will miss him.
So then we have a choice. Do we split and go to the two places, or do we stay together? So I'll be honest, our track record with splitting hasn't been great, but at the same time, I feel like it might be a 50-50 shot, and I'm worried we might make the wrong choice.
The question then is who goes where?
I know a thing or two about graves.
Miss Rossi, excuse me for speaking out of turn, but as a former gambler, I don't do it anymore. But if you got a 50-cent shot, and instead of playing your 50, you play a quarter, no matter how much money you think you might win, it's still less than putting it all on the same line.
Is also a thought. Probably the best thought. We either miss him or we do not.
Thinking about it a bit more rationally, he's trying to be invisible. He's calling in favors. I don't think he's going to show up at the art place to meet us.
It depends on his character. Yes, perhaps he wants to come in monologue and give us the Scooby-Doo version of his plan before he runs off. I mean, it's long shot, but people are like that sometimes.
Sometimes, but I doubt he will be. And then there's another thing to consider. If he's been feeding off of his descendants, and he needs to feed off his descendants, well, they're all in the Chicago area. I don't think he can leave, because if he does, he loses his food source.
I could be wrong, but I do not think he needs to feed on his descendants because he is very old from what I understand, and eventually he will run out of descendants. It is possible he enjoys feeding on them. Perhaps he has many descendants. He has a very large family. I don't know. Maybe
He's a
Most
Ventru,
of Chicago is
isn't
his. It's hard to say.
He's a Ventru, isn't he?
I do not know.
Hestia, do you know?
That's a good question. Would Hestia have noticed what clan he seems to be leaning towards or favored towards? He does own a lot of businesses.
Definitively, no, you wouldn't know. Based on everything that you've all heard, his network of favors, his multiplicity of businesses, his need to prop up his lineage, as well as feed on his lineage, the rarefied similarity and all of that difference amongst those victims that you all found, the need to memorialize his past and raise it above its level. That seems suspiciously, almost stereotypically Venture.
And just to make sure I'm not jumping the gun here, would Lucio be aware of the Ventru clan curse? He does have a dot in a cult. I don't know if that helps.
At one dot, not definitively, but there is a severely limited aspect of the rarefied taste that you've heard of. No one's ever seen Prince Jackson feed, even at the party where blood was free flowing and Lucio arrived late. There was never any feeding on Prince Jackson's part. No one's ever seen Ballard feeding in public or any of the many places where donors are provided. No one's ever seen Sovereign taking a sip. In fact, the only venture that you all had the opportunity of being close and near at hand with, the young Raoul, you all never saw him feeding, as if the venture have such a specifically refined palate that they can't bear to feed in front of others, as if there's a specific thing they need.
Right. So Lucio speaking in character again. So my guess is if he's a Ventru, which he seems to act as, and based on previous conversations seems to have been heavily implied, the Ventru, I'm not specifically aware of how it works, but I know that they need certain things when they feed, and he might not be able to get that outside of the city. I don't think he can risk leaving Chicago proper unless he knows that he can get that specific thing somewhere else.
It is possible, but it is conjecture. I believe probably our best course of action would be to check the gravesite.
I agree. I think that's more likely where we'll find him.
May not find it all. But given the two options.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Yeah, let's go.
All opposed? I think the ayes have it.
Well, I guess that does that, huh? I kind of thought that's what you guys would be choosing. So I already put in the GPS for to Graceland. It's just Graceland Cemetery really all that it's cracked up to be.
When have we not enjoyed ourselves at the cemetery, old friend?
It's not so much as us that I'm worried about. if it really is as potent and old as they say, you're in Barcelona. And he sits back and continues driving, leaving the idea of all that might entail hanging in the air. The drive to Graceland from where you currently are is one of roughly 40 minutes if there was no traffic. Unfortunately, it is, in fact, Chicago. There's always traffic. Now, for Silvio and Sophia, this is their first visit to Graceland, especially a visit to such a notable cemetery under the cover of darkness, well past the witching hour, when the walls between this world and the next are a little thinner. It's as if it's the last hurrah, the last chance to slip across the border before sunrise, before being caught across the border could mean the difference between eternal damnation and torment, or being torn from the world completely, but nothing remaining, not even in the Shadowlands. So this is the free-for-all. This is the get your kicks, because the road is coming to an end for most wraiths, most spirits, most unliving things that are going about their relative existence. For Miriam, there's very little reason to go to the gravestone. Pictures work in regards to reproducing tombstones and headstones on people's tattoos. There's always been, for the Painted Lady, a certain resistance to certain places, namely cemeteries, because while in modern nights the Nosferatu enjoy a reputation for being sewer dwellers and the like, there really was a time when they prowled cemeteries, moving from crypt to crypt, unearthing themselves every night and burying themselves every morning. It was them who, in the olden times, in the time before the Camarilla, in the time before modern sensibilities took hold, before science was God over man, where graveyards were places of death for kindred, because freshly dug graves often meant vampire presence. And Nosferatu were like plague rats. They were the carriers of all the harm that befell the kindreds of those times. So going to graveyards was akin to, well, reliving the darker days of one's existence and how one nearly brought damnation on the entirety of one's extended family. So to say she was touchy about graveyards and cemeteries would be very putting it considerably lighter than it actually was. Whether Miriam herself actually bothered to go and visit graveyards and cemeteries, that was entirely undecided. But for the coterie, for Lucio and for Hestia, this is the second time that Graceland has crossed the shelter's path. The very first time was with Clyde's family, who were used as pawns. They were the staked out goat luring the tiger into the open. They'd also run across something there in the cemetery. They'd come across something truly supernatural. And based on what you all were told, it was not kindred. So you arrive at Graceland, one of the oldest cemeteries in Chicago. Before it was Graceland, it was still hallowed ground. There was a church that once existed here, a little farm church in the middle of nowhere on the very northern edge of what Chicago would eventually become. It was at the edge of the territory claimed by Fort Dearborn. It was one of the way stations for people to know they were heading into Fort Dearborn, where they were reaching the merchant encampment that sprung up around DuSable's trading post. It was akin to getting to the edge of the map. Here there be monsters, and it was very apropos, because as you all make it to Graceland, unlike usual at this hour of the evening, the gates are open. Unlike usual at this hour of the evening, there are floating, bobbing lights further out there that show the darkness amongst the tombstones and the various paths through the cemetery. For its age and its reputation, it is not exactly a large cemetery. It only takes up about 4 blocks. It only holds a very few limited amount of actual interred dead, yet it is a beacon for those of a certain outlook on life and death. It holds a place in everyone's heart. Everyone knows where it is, everyone knows how to get there, and everyone's driven past its gates on a multiplicity of times. There are people who take pictures to signify they've actually made it there at various hours of the evening. So its main gates being open at this hour, and there being lantern lights further in, is like hearing the gong that here something comes. It's like seeing the lights of Gondor lit. It's like hearing the Rohirrim riding down the beach towards you. There is something afoot. There's something in the works.
I put something in OOC because during that 40-minute drive, Estia would have been busy, not just setting.
Okay. Go ahead, roll your resolve plus blood sorcery. The 40-minute drive from where you are to where you were to where you are is not one of complete silence. It's not one of complete internal focus. Not for everyone in the limousine. As Hestia chants and prays and mutters things under her breath, she tears open the palm of her hand with the sacrificial blade that every member of her clan keeps upon their person. Even devoid and divested of material, Vitae, like blood, is the life. It contains a magic all its own. And as Hestia works against the clock and against the powers infernal of the world, her hand open and the Vitae being willed forward, she continues speaking, muttering under her breath and focusing on the welling up Vitae, running her hands across Lucio's jacket. The Vitae seemingly disappearing as it makes contact, its scent filling the cab. There is power, and there is this. This is the aperitif. This is the teaser sampler. This is the main opening course to wet one's whistle, and that's exactly what happens for Miriam. Because while Vitae is not blood, it is such a sweet, sweet thing, and it does trigger the same mouth-watering effects, especially Vitae so laden with the discorporeal magics bound by will and learning. It's the perfectly cooked fry. You may want a meal, but it is perfectly crispy, golden, perfectly seasoned and salted. There's a side cup of your condiment of choice. You know it's not going to be filling. You know it won't satiate everything. but it's still a damn good fry, and it's right there.
Miriam will then watch closely, kind of longingly, at what's going on. He's not particularly hungry, but a small snack never hurt anyone.
What did that?
What was that?
No, it did not. And the unforeseen aspect of the way that the Tremere engage in controlling the forces of the world through their vitae is that by using the sacrificial blade, by using implements not of their own supernatural essence, there is an unforeseen aspect. They have to seal the wound by applying more of themselves. They have to tempt the beast a hair more when doing so. So the cost of tapping into that other world bears its mark on them both here and in the afterlife. So as you all make your way and arrive at Graceland, what is it that you all do? Realizing that there in the darkness there are bobbing and moving lanterns. They're further in down the path through the usually locked but now opened main gates.
Gates open is a good sign, yes?
Yeah.
It's as good a sign as any.
Yeah, but I don't think he has octopus arms. Why are there more than one light bobbing through the graveyard?
Perhaps
Might be
has
me.
friends.
Only one way to find out for sure.
Yes, let us get out of car and away from all that sensually awesome smelling vitae.
A little air goes a very long way. As you all exit the confines of the vehicle and adjust to the somehow darker innards of the cemetery. While the car could make its approach, and you could travel the paths in the direction of the lanterns, it would not provide you insight nor ability to move ahead of whatever those owners of those lights might do or have prepared. So across the graves, between the stones, dancing from one crypt to one headstone to one huge sculpture of an angel descending from on high, you all draw closer. Is there any particular order to how you all approach?
And Sophia will hold on to Silvio's arm for balance. As far as where we are in the procession, I don't know.
After handing Lucio the jacket back, knowing that that's going to give him some measure of protection from being ridden back, she doesn't mind taking a little bit of point, as she's a little familiar with this, cemetery, and that cliff is fairly significant and there's nothing else really like it in the cemetery. That one cliff is very specific.
So you're trying to compare the current geography with what you remember from the image.
Yeah, but then I'm sure he's probably mapped as well, or had mapped in the images of his apartment the changes that have been made over the years. Like I said, she's probably come here on her own before. So. Oh shit.
Everybody okay?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, doing your best to mentally map what Graceland is to what it was, to the view that it once had. It is far easier than it should be. Because while the ground no longer swells majestically over a ridge side staring down into the lake, thanks to the original city planners who backfilled and worked to bend nature to the will of man, the tree is still there. Not just one, but the copse that was in the edge of the image. The swooping, swirling vision that it once looked out on, while different now, all these years later. And the path no longer nearly as stridently high. Finding the rough area as to what's needed is easy. It is all too easy. Knowing what to look for. And where those lanterns are, that fairly wan amber light from those lanterns, letting you know that those lanterns are in fact probably older than at least Lucio in actual years, and probably nearly as old as Hestia. And you hear the voices on the wind. Why do we have to dig this up? It's not like there should be anything. Holy shit, look. Nah, that ain't right. This tombstone says like 18 something. Well, what the fuck is this? I don't know what to tell you, dude, but it looks like she's just sleeping. Yeah, but if she's just sleeping, who do you know sleeps with a fucking chair leg stuck in their chest like that? Gentlemen, if you'd be so kind just to stop staring and just do the damn job so we can get out of here. I've got a lot of things on my plate, and this, well, once you all get this situated, I can repay you in the manner of which you deserve. Now, lift with your box, boys. We've got to be off.
The tested need to be from something to use steel vitae.
What do you mean?
Is there a distance on her power to burn the vitae?
Yes, but line of sight is usually enough. At this distance, you're close enough to hear, which means you're close enough to be seen, which means you're close enough to affect.
Hestia looks at the others and very quietly says, "Now, I have a way from this distance to distract him. Should I, or should we just try to flank and take him down?"
Sorry, I had a hard time hearing you there.
As he whispers, from this distance, I have a way to distract him. Should I do so? Or should we just quietly flank and take him down?
I guess at this point there's no way he's coming quietly, so...
It's not much time for deliberation. Need to act.
we flank and take him down, I'd say. Actually, you know what? I don't think I trust us to walk quietly, so if you think you can take him down without dusting him from this distance, go ahead.
Perhaps you do your thing with Death Octopus.
I guess I can. Well, here goes nothing. If that's what you... And Lucio is going to use the Death Octopus, starting with Tenebrous Saboteur.
All right, make it happen.
2 rouse checks. Goodbye, Zero Hunger. I barely knew ye.
All right.
English Vital.
All right, make it happen.
Remember it's blood source, you don't remember the other part.
1 second. Intelligence plus blood sorcery, and it costs 1 rouse roll. All right. So several things happen at once, and none of them remotely good as far as things are concerned. Miriam, not having had the opportunity of watching Lucio literally dissolve into a puddle of unending night, a shadow darker than its nearest neighbor, as he disappears from this world and is absorbed into the horror that is death for all things. Hestia begins chanting, her voice raising like the wind as it stirs around her, and you can hear in the distance very eager, what the as the air above Monsieur Nash's head becomes a swirling mist of evaporating vitae pulled from the skin and his pores as if she was being wrung out like a towel. Silvio, ever the constant, draws his pistol and eases his body a little more forward, not blocking Sophia's view, but clearly easy enough to be the only target noticeable when looking towards Sophia. What is it that Miriam and Sophia actually do in this moment?
Miriam will try to make herself as small of a target as possible and get out her little knife.
Sophia can absolutely not fight, and she is acutely aware of this situation. So she will let her giant bodyguard protect her and probably say to him in Italian, I could go for a bite. In the hopes that he will interpret that as maybe I should not kill both of those guys.
He grits his teeth and grimaces as only men and women exposed to violence ever could, in preparation for whatever pain may come his way with one single-minded goal, be the last thing standing. And then his gun explodes in his hands as fire flies from it. The carnage, the rack and ruin of the actions afoot. There's one thing you should never do to a kindred, and that's give them a doorway to their beast. The beast already has enough inclination and intentions of divesting them of control as possible. Hunger being the primary catalyst, and as Hesja's beast raises, so too does Nash. Unlike Hesja, Nash is not the sort to be a patient man, and while nothing here is technically on his menu, instead of doing what most would do, taking evasive actions, running, hiding, dipping, ducking, dodging, he dives into the grave. And as he dives into the grave, the two men respond as one would when watching one's employer go leaping into a deep, dark hole. They begin to bug out. One's leg is taken from him. Now, in the movies, in the cowboy films of old and some of those of new, it is possible to shoot someone's gun out of their hand by hitting the gun with your own bullet, causing it to fly free. In the olden days, that's not what happened. The shells lodged into the hand, breaking, shattering those bones, causing the ability to hold the pistol to suddenly disappear. And when shot in the leg, it's often seen movie heroes and villains leaping away. However, they weren't shot by hand cannons, and they were not shot by people who had every intention of ending that thing eventually. It's always a flesh wound or a grazing shot. It's never the shot that shatters and obliterates the knee, taking away the ability to do more than scream in pain as blood and gristle and cartilage fly free. Watching it in the round, as it were, watching it live in high def 4K is another matter entirely, and the pain that causes can be felt by anyone and everyone who has ever stubbed their toe, magnified by several exponential levels. As Nash goes leaping into the grave, as one of the helpers goes down, the other pausing, stuck between ethical considerations of helping a friend. Well, I didn't know him that well. He only came to the house a couple of times. He's only my kid's godfather. Fuck that dude. And decides to continue heading on his way. What is it that everyone is doing?
Well, clearly the two have Nash well in hand. Miriam will leap out and do what she can to staunch the bleeding from the guy's leg.
Okay, so Miriam runs towards the blood. Nice. Excellent. Always a good choice.
Right. What could go wrong?
Lucio is making his way towards the grave to try and find what Nash is doing. Sorry, go ahead.
Hestia looks towards the group. Somebody should grab the girl. That's what he was here for, right?
The girl that he leaped on top of?
I thought they were aiming. Oh, yeah. That's it.
Sophia.
She will follow Silvio. I assume we're moving forward. So
Okay, so everyone's closing. Hestia, what are you doing?
Well, yeah. I mean, I guess we're closing on the grave cautiously, trying to figure out what it is exactly that he might be.
Oh,
But we want to make sure that he doesn't leave it without either being staked or dusted.
okay, excellent. Staked or dusted is always a good way to end the evening. As you all draw closer, Miriam, would you be so kind as to roll your resolve plus medicine? And you definitely need a DC 3 or higher, because if you fail, that adds to your difficulty to resist the blood that will be covering your hand. The cries of pain that you've heard so often from your tattoo chair, though considerably louder. The very sticky, icky blood that summons that little monster at the back of your mind that lives in your heart and will occasionally take over the driver's seat. And while Miriam attempts to save the poor hireling's life, to staunch the bleeding, to stop the dying, Lucio, you reach the grave, and you'll be damned. It is the most damnable thing that you have had the opportunity to witness and not actually be part of. Nash has removed the stake and bit into the neck as he's offering his wrist to the woman in the coffin. And yes, she's just as fresh as when she went in. That face, while it's not the foundational case that the others were used as smokescreen for, you've seen that face before, and that face very much is one of the previous victims. In fact, she was the capital case that they were pursuing before under Mercer. And 1 + 1, as it always does, inevitably equals 2. He has, in fact, done several unthinkable things. This woman, this girl, clearly was one of his descendants. This woman, this girl, this location is important to him because this is where he hides his meals, those who rise above the level of average dine and dash, who are brought over into this unlife to be used as living blood bags for his need, for his want, for his continued existence.
They're not just his descendants, they're his child, aren't they?
Those who rise to a certain level, most assuredly, he turns them into his feeding, his extended travel bags, as it were. And this is where he hides them, in the grave of his dearly departed. The level of fuckery that inspires in Lucio reminds him of Don Castiglione and his ties through the Castiglione and Tories through to the Puttanesca, who they've usurped as local powers. There's a word for that. You've seen some documentaries on RedTube about it, and it's right there on the tip of your tongue.
Let's start Lucio. I know you can't do it because obviously you recording anything go horribly wrong. So I'm going to. But he's just signed his death warrant, as far as I can tell. You don't have to take him alive, do you?
We can still bring him in alive. And Lucio's going to allow Hestia the chance to record for a little bit, and then he's going to try and envelop Nash and restrain him from finishing whatever it was he was doing. We are bringing him in for this.
Sophia, for her part, provided she has a vantage point to figure out what is going on like everyone else has, will tell Silvio to stake that bastard.
Sure thing. All right, so Ashley, would you be so kind as to roll your intelligence technology, please? Okay. And as always, as things are happening, as the world spirals, Lucia, would you be so kind as to go ahead and roll your strength plus brawl?
Strength and brawl.
Yes.
I'd like to risk a blood surge just for the hell of it.
Okay.
Three strength, 2 brawl, and then 2 from this. That's I finally have hunger again.
Crazy.
I'm gonna go ahead and burn a willpower.
All right, so Hesha begins using the phone, the camera, trying to capture this moment in all of its posterity as Nash feeds a kindred in a coffin. And not one of the newfangled plastic models that, are literally just rectangular boxes to inter themselves. This is a tailored, crafted, actual coffin. Clearly far older than the bulk of the kindred gathered, witnessing and watching, while the kindred inside itself is not of such age. Based on not only the style of dress that they are in, but also because of the makeup smeared across their cheeks, as if this was a tearful moment for them, as if when they were staked, when they were made, it was a moment of such beautiful purple prose-like interview of all of those sorts of movies. For them, this was the graduation, it was the wedding night, it was all so many fraught things, and the tears flowed, and their life was over, followed quickly by their immortality being placed on pause. Lucio wrapping the essence of his entirety of his being around Nash, lifting him forward and out of this moment. It's hard to not be surprised by how quickly Silvio actually moves. There is some speed to that bulk, some downhill running that is possible only with those with the significant experience of having to do so when lives are on the line or when no mortality is at risk. And while the state clearly misses the heart based on their for fuck's sake, it is another brick in the wall of eternal damnation. It's another painful reminder that just because you're dead doesn't mean the world can't hurt you. And as Nash is belly aching at the pain, and while the innocent young Kindred in the coffin realizes what's happened. Her mouth stained with the vitae flowing from Nash's wrist. Her eyes going completely blood red. Miriam says the delivery labor person that Nash brought along for this task. And while all of this chaos of thought and action is happening, the gentle breeze stirs the lanterns, causing them to dip and duck and bob along to some music only they can hear.
Sophia smirks a little. I think he missed.
I will punish him later. And also, what has happened to the other digging man?
He has run away.
So, being useless in the fight. No. Being useless in the fight, she will, quote unquote, help Miriam stop the flow of blood from this man's leg by putting it in her mouth.
No, that's definitely a good use of blood.
It is. And if I don't bite in, he'll scream a lot less.
So, the rack and ruin of this man's ability to continue walking is bathed and luxuriously massaged by Sophia's tongue, is what you're driving at, correct?
Yes, exactly. If you're sick enough, it's probably all very erotic.
Who says you have to be sick? There were several movies that are dedicated just to that, to blood play. That is highly... Well, if you're into ASMR, the sound of the licking, the pained cries being timed out almost like a drum kit, is enough to, get a little disco party going. And unfortunately, here's the question. Here's the thing that is not really quite considered as Nash is screaming in a fairly fucked version of Gaelic. And Heshia's hands are steady as a rock, yet there is a static and a lack of network causing the camera to fritz and stop and to start and what have you. There is a kindred who has been snapped from torpor. A kindred who has not been taught the rules, who is suddenly hungrier than they have ever been. So while Nash struggles and the delivery driver watches his life flash before his eyes, along with images of being defiled by the most beautiful lover he's ever had, amidst all of this pain, is there anything else anyone is doing?
Actually, once they broke apart and we started trying to capture him, she's gonna want her hands free. So recording would have stopped and she would have stuck her phone back in her pocket and pulled her blade out.
So as you're putting the phone away and drawing the blade, there's a blur to your right from the hole of the grave. Would you be so kind as to wear your dexterity and athletics if you're attempting to dodge, or your dexterity and brawl if you're attempting to go blow for blow with whatever that is?
would fleetness help with her dodge with celerity?
Sure. And make that rouse roll and make your dodge roll. Toying with the beast, poking the bear safely behind bars. There's still a certain limit to how long the beast will take being poked and prodded before something happens. Hestia knows that gamble well. Silvio, being ever the prepared man for violence, sees something happening, begins to whirl with the stake drawing from Nash to stab it. He lashes out his swings at the space where it should be. Unfortunately, even the undead have a certain gift of survival, and as he lashes out, it scrapes past him. The tip of the stake knocked away and broken as it moves past him. As it's moving past him, Hestia whirls and leaps out of the way, in the doing placing her all too close to Nash. All too close to the person who has carelessly, heedlessly caused all manner of death. There's not one member of the coterie who has been or is no longer that cannot point a finger toward his careless machinations, and the beast responds as only the beast does when least expected. Unable to move, his vitae leaking like a sieve from the wound from Silvio, Hestia finds herself drinking deeply. Hestia finds her face pressed against the wound in his chest, her fangs held firm, her tongue lapping. And there's strength and there's power. And as much as Hestia attempts to be high-minded about these sorts of things, there's also vengeance. He deserves to die. There are at least 7 kindred she knows who have lost their lives, their families, their immortality because of his careless actions. There are hundreds more families who are loosely related to this waste of immortality, who have lost, who have grieved, who have suffered. Damn the consequences. There's right and then there's right. And the only thing right for something like this is the end of their immortality. Fuck, you got the video. Why do you need him? Blurring past Silvio, the tip broken off the stake. It, because it is no longer her, it is no longer a they, it is the absence of everything remotely soft and human. There is simply the hunger. And as Sophia, safely ensconced in the shadow, Silvio, helping Miriam save this poor driver, gently laps away the blood. After all, you need to have the wound clean so you can properly. There is a hissing snap, the teeth connecting with bone and not stopping the drive as it, her, they, what it formerly was, the entity formerly known as an undead killing machine, the beast incarnate, sinks its fangs through the skull of this driver and begins sucking as if it's a straw. There's wrong and there's just wrong. And watching all of her labors or attempt to be better disappear in a mindless dive. There is a bit of Miriam that raises that has not seen the surface in a very long time. There's a bit of righteous fury, spurred on by the beast, of course, but it is no less accurate, no less valid. The efforts to save a life are its own reward. However, when they are taken by something so callous, something so uncaring, you were doing your best to not be stirred by the gentle lapping of Sophia. All of that pretty, smooth skin bent to something so dirty, stirring all sorts of thoughts and ideas. And then this. It's a travesty. Would you be so kind as to roll 1/3 of your humanity plus your unspent willpower?
Hey.
All right, there we go.
There's always an understanding that there's a mountain of straws that breaks the camel's back, but there's too many to count. Is usually what people are aiming for when they use that aphorism. How many straws does it take to break the camel's back? And the answer, despite any number guessed, is always wrong, because everyone looks at the mountain of straws. But the mountain of straws weren't what made the camel break. It is simply that last one, that final bit of nothing weight that lands. And in this moment, Miriam understands that for one minor aggravation more in the years of control, hard won and fought. Because what most people fail to consider is that even with tattooing, there is a huge amount of blood. Relatively speaking, of course. But it's constantly there. It's filtering the air. It is all around. Little droplets of human life floating through the air, teasing the beast. And Miriam has spent years developing the control and calm to work in the environment without losing her shit. One little aggravation more, and she would have lost her shit. One small, minor nudge. It is all she can do to sit on her knees and watch as the human she was attempting to save is drunk like a Capri Sun by this wild, uncontrolled, untamed thing that was someone's daughter, that was someone's lost little lamb, taken by Nash. And for Sophia, the only thing worse than showing up to a party ill-dressed is showing up dressed to the nines, appropriately outfitted, and finding that someone else had not a similar idea, but the same idea, a hair better. And watching as the monstrous child beast buries its fangs through the driver's skull, there is that feeling. How dare you upstage me and ruin my plans?
For a brief moment, she'll have an inner conversation with herself about how much better that blood must taste filtered through this kindred. And then she will just back away.
Lucia, watching the madness that is this moment, watching the beast spur friends, family, countrymen onto such a huge excess, luckily for him, being in the realm of the spirit, the scent and feel of Vitae and blood flowing in this small area is unmoving, but just barely so. Even seeing it from two shades of black and white, there is the richness that he understands is there. Vitae is old as Nash's, slowly coating the tongue and sliding down the gullet. All of that power, all of that history, all of those memories. And then the little young wild thing, drinking it dry straight from the source. Lucio, for all of his morality, for all of his understanding, has spent enough time around crime and murder scenes to know that the only part of the man that is pained was the initial bite. The brain itself doesn't have any nerves. It doesn't register as pain. So all he's getting were that quick little bite and the best pleasure of his life. Even with his knee shattered, even with his walking career effectively over, there is nothing more pleasurable. It's straight from the source. All of that adrenaline, all of those endorphins. Nothing like it.
Is it possible for Hess to try to roll like willpower? I've got like 6 unspent willpower, and I know she's deep in her cups right now, but there's something about this person she would try to stop. Like at least get him to Topher, then she'd stop. She wouldn't kill him.
That's what she tells herself. Unfortunately, her beast says otherwise. She has a messy critical with 9 successes. She's talking to herself now, but the response is akin to telling a cat, get off your keyboard. You can't pick the cat up, especially when you realize that cat is not a house cat. It is, in fact, a panther, a melanistic jaguar, sitting there waiting for the opportunity to pounce, and it sits there, its tail lightly flicking. You can appease it. You may be able to lure it away with something else, a steak maybe. But if you get too close, it will devour you. You need your keyboard because you can't, call for help. You gotta type it out, send a message, maybe in WeChat or what have you. The jaguar sits there, its tail flicking back and forth, watching you, lazily, daring you to come close enough to make it move.
So Lucio, seeing all this madness, decides it needs to come to an end, and he's going to bring out the arms of Ahriman to restrain Nash and the wild thing, try and pull Nash away from Hestia, and pull the other girl, basically like tie them up with the shadows back to back if he can. In a very Scooby-Doo-esque fashion.
So it becomes corporeal flesh once more. The shadows vomiting him out into this moment. And in doing so, the scent of blood and Vitae hit his nose. The reality as to what is actually taking place. Lives, centuries, immortality being drunk down like the finest of wines. Hestia divesting Nash. And Nash's childer, MRE, whatever she is draining the driver. There is the reality that even at the back of Beyond, certain things take time. And even with every intent of draining their victims dry, they are not quite there yet. Though the driver is far too gone for a mortal to survive because, well, nothing like having a punch wound right through the skull to hasten things along. Nash, however, the strength of the vitae, the richness of the blend, as it were, is a little too much to take directly straight to the head all in one fell swoop. So while Lucio may choose to act, what is it? Are you sure that is his declared action? Are you sure that is his intent? Knowing that Hestia is fangs deep in Nash. And knowing that Nash's childer pocket meal is fangs deep in the driver.
So, can you just explain? I'm sorry, I think I might have missed a detail there. Is Lucio, is he aware of what would happen if he pulls one away?
If he tears the child away, there's immediate exsanguination of life for the driver, though that's probably the outcome anyway. If he attempts to tear Nash away, there's a good chance that he may not be successful because Nashia is in fact fangs deep in the man's chest.
Okay, so with that in mind, he's going to leave the girl to Miriam and Silvio, and he's going to focus on separating Hestia and Nash.
Is he just going to break them apart like two Legos, or?
Yeah.
Okay. Excellent. Would you be so kind as to go ahead and roll your strength and brawl? Hestia?
I'd be using the arms of Armin, I thought.
Yeah, your strength plus brawl. The potent will add in after. And Hestia, would you be so kind as to roll a resistance versus the DC set by Lucio with your own strength and brawl?
Alright, in that case, to heck with it, I'm gonna rouse the blood just to make sure.
But don't you want Hestia to have a full tummy? Come on. Isn't Nash better served as an appetizer for Hestia?
He'd be even better served as an appetizer for Lucio.
See, there you go. Now there's a spirit. You guys can share him. There's more than enough to go around. 200 years is a lot of vitae. It's a lot of strength in the blood.
Just to make this more chaotic, Sophia's going to reiterate to Silvio that he's not staked yet.
What?
What was it, Hess?
Strength and what?
Bro. There are two things that you know about the feeding habits of life. One, you don't want to be on the receiving end of it. And two, it's always bad form to get between a predator and its prey. And the beast responds just as viciously and snarling as that lion denied the opportunity to finish feeding. Its mouth all coated with the vitae of Nash, its eyes of fire, with all of the life being absorbed, all of the memories and moments stored therein. And it snarls mentally and attempts to get you back to that lovely, delicious moment. And though the beast's mind is very up to the task, Hestia's body is not. There's nothing like being touched with the essence of death, the coldness of the Shadowlands being used as prod and pull. If Hestia was human, the strength inherent in that shadowy tendril, its coldness so deep and dark that it would leave burns across her skin. Luckily, Hestia's already dead. That's not quite what happens, though the cold of its touch is apparent. Chills running up and down our spines in concert with the beast raging in mind. And Silvio drives home the blunted stake, just missing the heart once more. Nash is as close to death as anything remotely ambulatory could look. There are 2 large holes in his chest, clipping and pinching the edges of his heart, but not quite right through it, because there is a slight misalignment of the heart. It is slightly more to the left than the right, but it is roughly centered. And while the left lung is smaller to allow space for it, it is only the size of your fist. And while Nash's wild life had caused him to, have a slightly broader hands, wide knuckles, and the sort of things that are well suited to holding a rapier, let alone the saber, is not as big as it should be for someone who is as tall. And it's no easy thing to drive a blunted piece of wood through someone's rib cage. Good try, though, he might do. Watching all of this, knowing that Lucio can't move, knowing that Sophia is egging Silvio to effectively stone a kindred to death with the blunted stake, watching as the child slurps and sucks, makes all sorts of annoying food sounds as they divest the drive of the last dregs of their life and slowly come back to a semblance of life. What is it that Miriam, Hestia, Sophia, and Lucio are doing?
Does Hestia have her agency back? Like the fogginess of the beast, she's fed enough to maybe get rid of that second hunger, right?
Yes, sure.
So she's back to her kind of thinking so. The angle that he stands at would probably be perfect to use the 2 stakes that are already in there to guide her hand. She's going to use her own blade and go in, because she's had enough just to the end. She's going to take him with the blade.
Or, hear me out. If Hestia's back to herself, Lucio can focus his full attention on restraining Nash with the arms of Armin and just make it super easy for Silvio so that he can't possibly miss the next one, right?
Maybe.
I mean, if I pin him to the ground and he's not moving...
I mean, how bad is Nash looking? Sophia is kind of an expert on the whole vampiric condition thing, so... And I can certainly make a roll if necessary.
Okay.
Because we don't want to dust him, because that's not going to do any good for anyone.
Are you sure about that? I'm sure that'd be great for some people.
Right?
I mean, it would be an amusing story to tell at next Thanksgiving, but...
Oh.
Sophia, did you get that?
I did, yes. So I would probably ascertain that he can't take many more of these quote-unquote staking attempts.
The worst can happen. Come on, he's almost there. One more, I'm sure, will be just a ticket. It's not like a kindred didn't latch onto his chest and imagine that they were pretending to be a Hoover.
Right?
It's not like a portion of his vitae was extinguished from a distance.
So in Italian, because it's a stressful situation, and you tend to revert to your native tongue in that, she will yell to Silvio to stop with the staking and just knock his ass out. As she continues to put some distance, backpedaling badly from herself and this other frenzied vampire who is having brain stew.
Yes, it's actually quite delicious. It's even better the second day once it simmers. And, well, anyway. So as Sophia's backing away, yelling towards Silvio, Miriam is standing there caught in a moment. She's the living embodiment of a YouTube video. Stuck in a moment. What is it that she's doing? Having watched this happen, having watched the end of several things occur all at once.
So, is the fledgling coming back to herself, or is she still in the middle of frenzy?
Oh yeah, she's getting those last the best drops of the human existence out. If it was possible to suck a thing completely inverted, that's exactly what she would be doing to this corpse.
Right. Well, once she has, calmed down and is, maybe not having blood red eyes at the moment, I'm going to make a rouse check and surge and use mesmerize and tell her to sit quietly.
And Hesha.
Seeing as how they've taken all my fun away.
Yeah, but they're just your coterie. They're not the boss of you, and you know Nash deserves death. You know that if you were to look back into the horror stories that is the history of every coterie member before they're failing, before they're falling out of immortality or worse, you would find Nash incidentally and accidentally. It wasn't as if he targeted the shelter specifically. He was literally so uncaring about the rest of the world that he's ended immortality for some and given eternal rest to others. He is the living embodiment of the callousness of the beast. He is the source of all the pain that Hestia has suffered over the last year, both directly and indirectly. Vivi wouldn't have been possible if Clyde hadn't been driven insane by what happened to his family, which is, incidentally, because of Nash. Lucio wouldn't have had to go through so much horrific pain and growth into the monster that he is, if not for indirectly Nash. Dizzy wouldn't have died if not for Nash. Hell, Simone may have had the opportunity to repent his worst behaviors and grow into the love he stated he had with his last breaths, if not for Nash. Raul wouldn't have ended up staked somewhere in Gary, unknown to anyone, if not for Nash. Alex wouldn't have had to flee the city to find himself, if not for Nash. And if you won't do it for yourself, do it for the love you once had for all the members of your coterie. Here's the source. Here's the reason. And Lucio has released you.
Okay, I think it's time for that willpower roll.
Well, it is your call. What do you think your target number should be? Will Hesha give in to do the right thing? Or will she let him live?
She doesn't see it as what it is. She sees it as delaying his death long enough for him to be punished for it.
Do you really think that a venturer who has managed to earn as many favors as he has will actually be killed? Or will they simply banish him from the city? Next time you're back here, we will unleash the hounds upon you. You think that he doesn't have enough favors to slip right out of it? Hell, you all don't have any favors, and you slipped past the government's grasp 3 times without any favors, without any boons owed you.
There is a thought in her head of, if they don't punish him, I will make it my mission to do so. But she's going to do her best to take him in near as undead alive as he is right now. So she is going to force herself to put her blade away and back. And that if I have to roll power roll, I'll do.
No willpower roll needed. As she is choosing her better monsters, she is choosing to believe that there is a semblance of fairness, that there is a balance to all of the wrong that has been wreaked into the world by this man's hands because of his lack of care. As she is counting that the mission assigned them wasn't designed for their failure and immediate death, that this was, in fact, a mission to remove a menace from the world. And she backs away. She keeps.
She knows this was a failure, which is why they should not fail and bring him in, stating that he's confessed.
So while the night is still young enough that there could be moral quandaries, and long enough where there's not much time to do much, with Miriam having easily subsumed the childer's mind, with Sophia having established enough distance from herself that the need to drain and lap something into the next world doesn't immediately take hold. Silvio restrains isn't the stake in the heart the way to knock out a vamp? He doesn't ask any question, he keeps from doing so, and instead removes the handcuffs from his pockets because he knows that kindred don't get knocked out. No matter how hard you hit him, you literally have to cave in the skull, and that would probably be too much damage for the way that this zombie-like kindred looks. With him handcuffed, Lucio could, if he so chose, release the arms of Araman, giving him the ability to move about the graveyard or at least help carry the corpse that was Nash back to the card, or you can just hold it. It's up to him. So what are we all doing? As Nash is handcuffed, as his childer sits empty-minded and adult, quietly watching the horror that is their now new existence.
He will release the arms to help shove Nash in the trunk, and we'll also have to take the girl with us.
She is evidence.
Girl could be a problem. You have her mind.
For the moment.
Is there anything else that you all would do before leaving?
We should probably clean up that body.
Throw it back in the grave and cover it back up.
He's lucky he's already whole, yes?
Agreed. He goes in the hole.
Lucille will help her out of the hole.
Of course, might be easier to throw off cliff.
Yeah, but there might be questions about an open grave. Might as well just cover it up.
Probably more questions about fresh grave in this part of cemetery. Either way is questions.
How much damage to the back of his head is done? Is it like crushed in, or is it just two perfect holes?
There are 4 perfect holes, 2 in the forehead, 2 in the top of the head, in the actual dome of the skull.
Just looks for a large rock. And covers up that it was a vampire kill so that they can roll him into the hole, so that even if they dig up the fresh grave, it was like a criminal deal gone wrong or some shit.
Excellent.
Or could throw man in trunk and throw somewhere else. Just leave open grave. Then they assume someone will rob grave and get away, as opposed to leave body in place.
Also a possibility.
Little fall. You might have to ride it back with little fall.
So plans, ideas. What is it that we are doing? What is the final plan?
How much time do we have in the evening?
Far too little.
Let's take the body with us, and we'll leave the grave as is. They'll think it's a grave robbery. There's no cameras in this grave, as far as I'm aware. Removing the body from the scene is faster. We don't have too much time.
Can throw out the car on way. Just move from this area.
Now, the look that passes across Silvio's face is the first time the coterie has looked upon that gaze coming from him in any semblance of a direction of Sophia. It is as foreign as watching a 3-eyed person attempt to use bifocals. It's just unnatural. And it's such a fleeting thing, you have to ask whether it was actually there. Just could be easily a trick of the light. The lanterns are bobbing and moving there.
You have thing to say?
Forgive me. I don't mean nothing by it. It's just you know I got a problem with littering. That's just
It's okay. He is biodegradable, I assure you.
Again, scusi.
I was going to consider that a them problem, her problem, and hence in the car. That is a little lover's quarrel that she wants no part of.
What do you suggest then? You want to leave him here, dig you, bury him in a hole, not have much time to do manual labor?
We got the compactor.
So, okay.
He was like he gliding up and filling with nothing but the essence of joy when given the opportunity of a nice, hot bowl of fresh-made fajoule. The clearly far and ahead of its time musculature already developing, the strong back, the wide thighs, and that smile, that toothy, open smile. For a brief second, it's there and then it's gone. He's back to being the gruff, grim son of a that he may be. And as you all make your way to the car and you ease off into the night, leaving the gates open, leaving the grave unfilled, leaving with all the horrors of this moment, there's but one destination ahead for you all, one immediate place to go first. And with plans of standing once more before the government. Not sure whether it will end with you all torturing an innocent kindred for all of the information they may have in their head, or whether it will end with Nash escaping into the night. Not sure what will happen afterwards. You all know that you must stand before the government with your prize, be it whatever it might be. And with those thoughts of standing before the powerhouses and elders of the city, I'd like to thank you all for a lovely session. I look forward to next time. Thank you all so very much. Have a good night.
Good night, everyone.
Yay, we accomplished something. Good night,
We're
everybody.
not gonna die yet. Yay.